All right, good evening, citizens. City Council. I'd like to call the February 21st, 2023 meeting to order at 6 p.m. Before we call the roll, I'm going to ask Amy if she would read the hybrid meeting ground rules and then call the roll this evening. Amy?
Tonight's meeting will be held in person with a virtual meeting component. If you are participating virtually, please make sure the name shown at the bottom of your video view is the name you would like the mayor to use. You can change this by right-clicking on your video view and selecting Rename. Audience members present in the council chambers will be called upon during public comment periods. Those participating remotely should virtually raise your hand if you wish to speak. To virtually raise your hand, click on Participants and then click on Raise Hand. If you are participating by phone, only press *9 to raise your hand. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Brent Gary.
Here.
Richard Bloom.
Here.
Brad Brink.
Here.
David Fetto.
Here.
May Hayes.
Here.
Kate Moran. Yep, running late. John Smart.
Here.
Ken Stoker.
Here. Kate let us know that she was running a little bit late this evening, so we'll make note of what time she attends this meeting this evening. And with that, I'd like to ask Councilmember Hayes to lead us in Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Hayes. Council, the agenda is before you this evening. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carried unanimous. Thank you. And this evening for presentations, we have Matt Rasmussen with Benton County, and Matt's going to be giving us an update in regards to the Recovery Center. Matt, thank you for joining us this evening, taking some time out of your schedule. We appreciate you coming this evening. So turn it over to you.
Got a few slides here. I was hoping that Kyle Sullivan would join me here. He may pop in at some point, just in case there are questions that that he's more suited to answer, but we should be able to get through this. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. So we'll start back with a little bit of history. And so as the council may be aware, last year in 2022, both Benton and Franklin counties implemented a new 0.1% sales tax that's specifically targeted to mental health and chemical dependency issues. It can also be used for therapeutic courts. That's another one of those. But Franklin County implemented theirs and started it in April, and Benton County implemented theirs and started it in July. So we've been collecting now for about 4 months on that. One thing to remember is that the taxes, the revenues from those taxes are used to fund services. So we've got the Recovery Center and capital piece that we're funding. This will cover the services, although I did just see a bill today that was dropped over in Olympia that may change that and allow that tax revenue to be used for facilities. So we'll see, kind of be monitoring how that goes and watching that very closely to see what happens. Can you go to the next slide? So following the tax implementation, the commissioners decided in both counties that they would be wise to have a citizens advisory board for this tax to guide them on making decisions on what those revenues should be used for. So they jointly established that committee in March of 2022, and it consists of 17 volunteer members. They come from various fields. They serve 3-year terms, and they are there to advise the commissioners on the needs and outcomes from the behavioral health field. So this is a list of the members. I'll spare reading all the names. We have representatives from law enforcement, from the fire EMS community, hospitals, specifically emergency rooms. We have some mental health and substance use disorder experts, people with lived experiences, and then along with just members, the general community. And so we do have a 17th member, so 8 members from each county, and then a 17th member who represents both counties, kind of as a tie-breaking vote if that ever came to it. Next slide. So there are also non-voting members on the committee. Those are consisting of the county administrators from both counties, our human services manager, representatives from the therapeutic courts, a representative from the Benton Franklin Health District, and also a representative from the Benton Franklin Recovery Coalition, who is a nonprofit advocacy group. They happen to be the largest such group in Washington State. So that's pretty good thing to have, and we wanted them to be a part of that committee guiding those decisions. And so the committee, as we kind of talked about, that exists to guide the direction that the commissioners should go. So right now what the committee is doing is they're gathering up ideas, kind of we're calling it a wish list of all the services and things that we think would be good to have in Benton and Franklin counties. And then they're going to prioritize those services based on what the biggest needs are, and then come back and evaluate those on how much they would cost, and ultimately make recommendations to the boards of county commissioners on what services should be funded using that new mental health sales tax. Next slide. We meet every second Thursday, currently at the Benton Franklin or Benton County Commissioners Meeting Room in Kennewick at the new administration building there. Every second Thursday at 2 p.m. So those meetings are open to the public. Anybody's welcome to attend, and we do get a surprisingly good public turnout for those meetings. We have quite a few people who come and sit in the audience and regularly attend. So that's really good to see. It's not just the committee members sitting around there. A lot of public participation. So it's nice to see that. They have, within that committee, we've formed several subcommittees. So we have specifically a mental health subcommittee, a substance use subcommittee, a communication subcommittee, because what we found is there's a lot of confusion around what services are available in the community and how to access those. So we thought the committee could be a driver for that, especially as we bring new services on. We can help get the word out for that so people know what's becoming available. And then the other one that's also very important is the workforce development. One of the biggest hindrances right now to getting mental health and behavioral health services is that there are just no people going into that field. And so all these providers out there cannot find staff to come in and stand up new services. So that's something that we're working with the colleges on and trying to drive programs that would get people better suited to go into a field in behavioral health as we get out of school and want to and get a job. So that's a kind of a brief history on the committee and where we're at. We've had several meetings. I think things are going really good. But the biggest focus that the committee has right now is the recovery center. And so we'll go through a little bit of history on that for everyone who doesn't know. Back in 2020 in October, Benton and Franklin counties, along with the Kennewick Public Hospital District, sponsored a feasibility study to determine where a recovery center could be located. And so that ultimately they came up with the old KGH site would be a good location for that type of service given its past use of the hospital. So after that feasibility study was completed, the county began negotiations with LifePoint Health, who is the owner of Trios and Lords here in town, and ultimately they were the owner of the KGH facility. During that time, we also started seeking funding for construction and did receive our first direct appropriation from the state in June. And then in June the following year, almost 2 years later, we concluded negotiations with LifePoint Health for the KGH building, had a purchase and sale agreement that we've all agreed to. But one caveat, and I'm sure people have heard about it, is they put a restriction on us. They said we could not have any healthcare services whatsoever, which we expected. They gave us some exceptions around mental health and substance use. But one thing they did keep back is we could not operate a crisis stabilization unit, which was one of the key components of what we wanted to do. We could not operate that and keep people in the facility for more than 72 hours. So that's very restrictive. The state law gives us a minimum of 5 days, and they were only willing to go 3. And so that prompted the commissioners to say, hey, if we want to run this facility and have it be successful, we're going to need to find a second location where we can keep those people without that time restriction. They can be there because they can even get court ordered for 14 and 90 days if the court determines that they need to be there. We did not want to have a situation where we had to turn someone out of the building after 3 days because of an arbitrary use restriction. So the county began seeking another facility. We found someone who was willing to lease us a building. We began negotiating a lease with them. And then in November of 2022, we closed on the Trios or the old KGH building. And in the same month, about a week and a half later, we were able to complete negotiations for the lease for the second facility. So now we have the KGH building and we have a second building that we're leasing where we don't have that use restriction. So the vision for that, and part of why we wanted to, why we had to seek that second facility, is we want this a no wrong door facility where people can come regardless of their condition, be it mental health, be it substance use, one-stop shop, so law enforcement, EMS, your friends or parents, or you can just walk in by yourself. You go to one building and you don't have to worry about, am I going to get the services I need here? There's going to be someone there to assess you quickly and assign you to the proper place within that building. Come back, go here, go somewhere else. You're going to be welcomed in and get the services that you need right there. So we have walk-ins, voluntary. We also want to do an involuntary component. So people who are determined to be a danger to the community, law enforcement can bring them there and we can detain them there as long as we have that authorization from the crisis responders. So that's part of our phase 1, we're calling it. So it's going to be the crisis stabilization unit, which was that one that's subject to that use restriction. It will have what we call a 23-hour observation unit. So that's a very short-term thing. It's maybe less, it's less intensive. So people who are just intoxicated, they just need a place to sober up. They can come there, stay for less than 1 day, get some treatment, get a meal, get their clothes, and then if they're not a danger to the community and they just want to go, they can be released, or they can be funneled into other services if it's determined that that's needed, or they want to do that. So that's kind of an entry point to the whole system. And the crisis stabilization unit and the secure withdrawal management unit are a little more intensive. Those are longer term stays, usually 5 to 14 days typical. So those would be all part of the phase 1 at that other facility because they're not subject to that use restriction. We do have future phases that we're looking at. A lot of things we can do at the KGH building. There are no restrictions there for us for anything having to do with outpatient services. So that's less than 1 night stay. Anything having to do with substance use facility or substance use services. So there are no restrictions there. And anything having to do with youth, mental health, substance use with youth, there's no restriction there. Our restriction is specifically to adults. And so there's a lot of opportunities there at the KGH building to expand into those type of programs as we grow. So I think everyone's probably familiar with the old KGH building, but that is that we purchased about 8.5 acres of property along with 193,000 square feet of building space. So there's quite a bit of room there, not only within the existing buildings, but we also have a lot of room where we can build additional structures. There's a helicopter pad that we clearly aren't going to need. So we're already looking at what other uses could come onto the site there down the road. These are long-term. We want to fill the buildings that we have first, but there's opportunities to grow there, which is part of why the county ultimately said this was a good deal. There's too many valuable opportunities to pass up even that use restriction. And so the second facility, I'm sure some people have heard about it, called a wine factory or anything. It is the old tank storage room at the Welch's plant. And so that's nearby the public market. It is separated by a street and another large building. And we will do some screening and improvements there to maintain that separation from the public market. But it's located at 10 Bruno Avenue in Kennewick. It's the old warehouse. It doesn't look like a lot right now, but I've been on plenty of tours of these type of facilities that start out in an old warehouse, and they're beautiful world-class facilities when they're done with them. So we would do a lot of things like take down that fence, put windows and glazing throughout the building to open it up and make it look nice, new parking lot, landscaping, those kind of things. And so it will not look anything like those pictures when it's done. So I want everybody to understand that it's not going to look like that when it's finished. So that building currently has 22,000 square feet on the ground, but it is 28 feet tall, and inside of it there's a steel freestanding structure, so you can go in and frame that in and add an entire second floor within that and double that square footage to just over 40,000 square feet. So pretty good amount of room there for what we need to do. So this is just another summary of what we're looking at doing at each of the facilities. So as we talked about, the Bruno Street facility is going to have that no wrong door. Anything we do there avoids that 72-hour restricted covenant. So we're going to focus on the services that are subject to that. Those are going to go towards that Bruno Street property. We got room for expansion. And then at the Auburn facility, the old KGH, we do have that restricted covenant. So we're going to focus on services like youth, outpatient, substance use. We're talking about potential transitional housing program there. So people coming out of long-term recovery who need a place to stay, get some life skills training, some job training, some help with job placement. They could all come there. They typically stay for maybe 12 to 24 months. And then we have, excuse me, we're talking with a provider who does this on a regular basis. And they would help get them transition back into society as they come out of those recovery things. Because as we understand, that's the part when people are most vulnerable, is that first year to 2 years when they end up back in the same situations that they were in before. If we can break that cycle, it greatly increases their chances for long-term recovery. So that's another one. So right now we're looking for a provider. And so that's been a challenge. We first put out an RFP to get a provider to come in back in November. Originally had thought the best idea would be to have one provider for all 4 of the primary services that we were looking at. So that's the way we asked for it. And we only got one response to that, which, you know, they do this kind of stuff and they were good, but the committee, the advisory committee, wanted to have more than one choice. And so they asked for us to revise that RFP and separate that out and allow for providers to bid only on one service within that thing. So we did that. We took their recommendation back to the commissioners. They agreed that that would probably be a good idea. They would like to see a little more competition. So we revised the RFP, released it again in January as a round 2, and we're expecting responses for that on March 3rd. So we're hopeful to have some additional people come at least being interested in one or more parts of that program. We also are currently working on a provider RFP for that recovery housing component that we talked about. So we have some interest there, so we're going to put that out for bid if there's more than one provider who is interested. But we're starting to work towards doing that. We want to start getting some activity at that KGH building and pulling in with services. So hoping to have that out. This says February. I think we're probably going to be pushing that into the first or second week of March, but it'll be pretty close. That'll get the start there. And so last slide I have here for tonight is just kind of a summary of where we've gotten funding from so far for this program. And so Benton County, as most everybody, got the American Rescue Plan Act funding, or ARPA. And so we decided to dedicate $5 million of that. Behavioral health services is an outright allowed cost. And so we've put $5 million of that funds towards this program. And then we've collected a series of direct appropriations from the state, competitive grants from the state, and one direct appropriation from the federal government. So you can see a summary there of the different grants that we have. We're applying for some other grants on top of that still, that is in the application phase. Right now we have just short of $16.5 million collected, which is going to get us a very long way in building that first phase of that recovery center out. So we're hopeful, like I said, we're watching to see if this new legislation passes. If that does pass and we have access to that sales tax money for facilities, right now the county's collected about $2.5 million in that already in the first 4 months, or we've had it for 6. Sales tax runs 2 months in arrears, so we've only gotten 4 allocations. But 2.5, so we're going to be in that $6.5 to $7 million a year range, which would go a long way towards building out some of these and then transitioning after those one-time costs are done into the operational side. And that should, with Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance that covers some of these services, that money should go a long way towards paying a provider for things that aren't covered by insurance. We also have, I'm sure the council has heard about the opioid grants that are coming through, and so the county gets an allocation. We've talked to a few of the cities are talking about potentially partnering together to do that and do services here regionally with the opioid funds. And so that's another, Benton County's allocations around $200,000 a year from that. And then, everybody else would maybe another $350,000 to $400,000 that could go towards services in the community. So we're in a really unique position as we have a tremendous need and there's a lot of money. So now we just need to get people to come in and start providing those services. Hopefully we can do that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has.
Before I let council ask you some questions, Matt, do you have that bill number that just got dropped in regards?
I don't have it handy with me, but I can send it to you tomorrow.
Yeah, we have a meeting coming up here, so you can share it with us, and then I can get that out to council and ask them to take a look at it.
Absolutely.
But Tim Brink is a board member at AWC, so I'll ask Mayor Pro Tem Brink to keep an eye on that too and share that with AWC.
Yeah, no, it'd be great. It looks like a good deal for us. It's interesting on that particular statute is that cities were allowed to use that money for facilities, counties were not. And so it's interesting now that they're looking to change the rule. What always confused me is they want you to stand up programs and services, but you can't use the money to build a building to actually house them. So, good to see that somebody else realized they're trying to change it.
Matt, I thank you because I know that we've all been talking about this for a long time, the city managers, county administrator meetings, and it's been a lot of hard work on your behalf and your team's behalf. I really thank you. This is something that's certainly a necessity and a need in our region. The chief can speak to that too, I'm sure. Mental health is a real challenge that we've got now, especially with the type of legislation that's been passed in the years gone by. That is giving the people the opportunity to go the wrong direction and not have any chance to get back on the right path. And this is another thing with the amount of financing that the county has already established. That's great. You don't usually see going into a program or an idea with the resources that the county has put forth to really move those forward. So we thank you and your team and everything that you've done. So with that, I'll go ahead and ask Mr. Bloom, Councilman Bloom, a question on that.
I have a couple of questions. One is this your capital budget?
No, none of this money is coming out of the capital.
No,
account.
I meant, but this is allowed for capital expenditures.
That number there is all for capital expenditures,
Right.
yes.
And not from personal experience, but actually from personal experience because I did visit it one time to get a blood test. But the detox center in Pasco, is that being replaced by this action?
So
Does that still exist?
I recall that does not exist. It shut down.
Matt, go ahead and introduce.
Yeah, so Kyle came and he used to run the detox center. So he can.
So I told just meeting late, I have not ever been to this building, so I ended up at the old city council meeting.
Needed
This
some
is-
engineering
this is much
services.
nicer.
You found
So-
that. Yeah.
So the old detox building that's on the corner of 7th and Ainsworth it currently houses the Columbia Basin Veterans Coalition. And so we've been that wasn't a secure detox. That was what they call a social detox, which is accepts voluntary clients and in the event that you have someone who's under the influence of drugs or alcohol and is not their behaviors are out of control, they didn't have the ability to keep them there. One of the grants that Matt had talked about is specifically earmarked for secure withdrawal management unit. It'll be a locked facility that can accept people on a civil court order. The detox.
So currently we don't have it.
We've not had one probably, I would guess maybe in 5 years, 5, 6 years.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smart?
Sorry, push the button. Since we don't have a detox center and just an associated question, how many, I guess you call them patients or people taking advantage of this program, what do you expect exist today?
I think, as if you've ever heard a presentation by the Recovery Coalition, I think Matt probably talked about that a little bit at the beginning. They talk about us being one of the largest areas in the state without those services. And so I think that's where you end up. I think from the jail perspective, there are a lot of times where someone is under the influence of the drugs or alcohol. And there's not any other place to take them. So they either end up in an ER and they have to stay there oftentimes with law enforcement supervision while they detox, or they end up in the county jail. And this facility is directly going to address those issues and be a more appropriate place that takes them as opposed to jails and homes.
Giving them opportunities to get help to themselves as opposed to being in the revolving door that we see quite often now with the judicial system that we have without having them.
Yeah, so what do you think a number is? How many patients like this do we have in our local hospitals on a weekly basis? Do you have a number?
They don't track it to the level that we would like them to, but we've talked about with Greater Columbia Behavioral Health, that if we only, we're gonna start with 16 beds. And the thought is that's gonna fill up very quickly. So that's it. Most people don't stay a long time, so we're rotating people in and out, but it's not gonna be very long for that.
That was gonna be my next question is, how many beds, if you will, would there be in each of these two facilities that you're talking about?
Each of the units were limited to 16 beds by state law, otherwise it triggers what's called an Institute for Mental Disease, and that puts us in the area we don't want to be because we can't accept Medicare and Medicaid. So each one will have up to 16 beds. It will be in crisis stabilization will be 16, or secure job management will be 16, the residential substance use will be 16. But the 23-hour facility, they don't use beds, they use what's called, literally use recliners. It's recliner chairs, things that not staying. And so that will be around 20 recliners there. So I think, you know, I'm talking to people, it's not gonna take long.
Well, I was just wondering though, these look like really large buildings. And I'm trying to figure out how you need those size buildings for something that has 16 beds and maybe, I don't know, 16 staff members or 20 staff members. Isn't there a lot of extra space? I mean, is there a plan for expansion? or-
In the Bruno building, when we look at the needs for the space, because there's more than just the beds and the office, the administrative spaces, there's got to be community meeting rooms, there's got to be laundry and kitchen facility and things like that. So for those three components, they're probably going to take up all of that. KGH will actually significant. And so, yeah, we would not be expecting to fill that up right away. So we can look at, if you structure the units correctly, you can do multiple units within the same building as long as they operate. So as if we needed more than 16 beds, we can actually do it in the same building. It's fascinating to watch and how complicated they make it in the state system. It says it's a tremendous need in the state. It can easily provide the services.
So who would be for the involuntary patients, how would they come to you? Just through the police forces locally or other mechanisms?
Well, in the state of Washington, I don't know if you've heard the term designated crisis responder. They've had several, they used to be county designated mental health professionals and designated mental health professionals. I date myself in that I happen to be one years ago when we were county designated mental health professionals, and that's a long time ago. And so those are the individuals in the community that can civilly commit a person to either a security withdrawal management unit or under the mental health hold. So used to be up to 72 hours. Now it's a 5-day hold. They determine the next course of treatment.
So how do we learn more about the qualifications of those individuals and their authority to take the citizen into custody?
I guess, like I said, years ago, I was a DMHP for 20+ years. So they have to have qualifications. They have to have a master's degree plus a level of years working in the field. And then there's a training program. I'm unfamiliar with what it is now because the county doesn't operate those services any longer. But when the county did, usually it would take, before someone could go out and make an independent decision, it would take anywhere from 6 months to a year before they were able to go out and sign on the dotted line, so to speak.
So these individuals work for the county or for the state, which is it?
Years ago, they used to work for the county. The county's not provided that service since 2016, and Lord's Counseling Center operated that service after the county did for a couple of years. Now it's comprehensive health care. Contract from the state.
So their authority comes from the state to,
Yes,
to
from
round somebody
RCW.
up.
Yeah.
Okay. just
Yeah,
trying
and
to
so
be
they're
clear.
designated through Greater Columbia Behavioral Health is they are the overseer of the contract for crisis services in the 9-county region. And so through contract with them, comprehensive healthcare is authorized to provide those services in Benton and Franklin counties. And then there's a process that they have that designates that person as essentially an officer of the court.
Oh, so they're designated as an officer of the court.
They are.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you. Appreciate that.
What else? Sure. One other thing I might add, and Matt, maybe can elaborate on a little bit with the opioid funds that are coming available to the different cities. We've talked region-wide and you were referring to the size of the KGH facility and the lack of that type of service that we have on the east side. We have been talking with the different counties region-wide. Matt, share just a little bit about the door being open to not just locally here, but how broad this area could be and take advantage of this program.
We have had some discussions with, particularly Walla Walla and Garfield and Columbia counties, just kind of offhand, especially as we've had to all get together and talk about how to set up the opioid advisory council, and that kind of prompted some of these other discussions about the services that we were standing up here in the Tri-Cities, and there's a lot of interest from these small communities around us to be able to participate in that and have the ability to send people from their communities here. And so, yeah, there's the potential that it would become a regional behavioral health center, not just something for Benton counties. And I know there's been a lot of discussion, you've seen things in the media and stuff about Franklin County wanting to go their own direction, or at least one of their elected officials talks about that. And so I think, there's definitely going to be at some point a need for more facilities over there. Like I said, that for those facilities are going to fill up. And so I think we ought, the counties, and it sounds like the commissioners are interested in cooperation with the long-term goal of having facilities in both areas to serve the community, because we are going to attract people from all over. I think it wouldn't surprise me to get people from Hermiston and Umatilla because they don't have services.
So we'll go to Councilmember Moran and then back to you, John.
Thank you very much. Oh,
I think, and I'm not sure if Matt talked about this earlier. I think some of the services that have been talked about that I believe we probably talked about the use restriction. Some of the services that are still allowable at that facility are and that have been talked about within the advisory group are services, youth services, such as the children's long-term inpatient. You got that? Okay. Oh, okay. And so that could quite frankly become a statewide resource. Last time I talked with the representatives at GCBH, our state is lacking available inpatient services for youth, and so you have somebody who needs longer term treatment. There's a 90-bed wait list to be able to access those services, which sometimes take anywhere from 6 to 8 months. And so that is not only is that something that is lacking on the east side of the state, but it's something that could fill a statewide gap and also generate revenue for the community too. So.
thank you. Actually, that relates to what I'm going to ask a question about. I do think that it's extremely important. There is a severe lack of youth services here and across the state. So I'm wondering, that limit for the 16 beds or even the 20 recliners for the less than 1 day, is that something that also applies to youth services, or is that just adults?
The 16-bed limit is a Medicaid requirement. So for the facility to be able to bill Medicaid, they have to cap the unit at 16. That doesn't mean that there can't be multiple 16-bed units. But the problem, like Matt had talked about, when you go over 16 beds on one unit, it becomes what's termed an institute for mental disease. And then you can't, even if you have someone who is Medicaid eligible, you're not allowed to bill Medicaid. Medicaid won't pay because of it seems really crazy, quite frankly, because these services are needed. But it's a strictly Medicaid requirement.
And that's for adults and for youth, for any people. Okay, thank you.
So I just want to quickly follow up on that. Maybe you mentioned it, but where is the closest facility would be akin to this that you're proposing? Yeah. Well, actually, for the 16-bed type facility, is there one in an adjacent county around here or not?
Yeah, for youth or just in the.
I guess I'd ask for both. Sure.
Okay,
What do you got?
youth, they have an adolescent unit. 8 of those beds are what are for term CLIP, children's long-term inpatient. And again, there's a wait list to get into those. And so for adults, I think the closest ENT is in Yakima, and they have a 16-bed unit. Again, that's services Yakima County residents, and it's full almost all the time. And so there's very rarely does someone from out of county end up there. In terms of residential SUD services, I believe there's there just simply aren't those facilities on these. There's some up in Spokane, but there's just not the availability.
Can you describe what that is? What's a residential inpatient?
Doctor, and the purpose of this is to have the whole continuum. So let's say somebody is in crisis, they're under the influence of some drug or alcohol, and they need to come off of that. They would start out in a withdrawal management unit. The hope is, they would be there for a number of days until they detox off of the whatever it is they were using. And then a residential, it's inpatient drug treatment. And so essentially
in their home, or is it?
No, it's at the
building,
facility.
at the
Yeah.
facility. Okay.
Yeah. And so it would start with 30 days. And then if they needed additional time beyond that, there's they have to justify that with the payment source, but it's inpatient drug treatment to go beyond just detoxing off of that.
And sorry for so many questions, but I'm interested in what this is about. Besides drug abuse, what are some are there examples, you don't have to get into too much specifics, but of other things that would be treated for children? Or are they all also anticipated to be like drug addiction type products?
Yeah. And when we start talking about the children's long-term inpatient, that's primarily mental health. The residential SUD, residential inpatient treatment that we're talking about would be for adults. I think and I think that's the beauty of having a facility the size of the building we have down on Auburn Street is that, if there's determined that there is a need for residential treatment, substance use treatment for youth, we would be able to add those services there as well.
I guess I'm just, and so that was my last question, I guess, because I know I'm wearing people's patience, sorry. But what do we do with all these people now? Right? Where are these children that would be taking advantage of CLIP? What, do they just stay home? They just go to juvie or something? Or do we have examples and numbers? I'm trying to get a feel for the pressure of the need here in our 2 counties for this service.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just crisis management. And I unfortunately, I don't have a number for you. I think the team that are providing the services do the best that they can with limited resources. They band-aid things together. Oftentimes, if they'll end up, the youth will end up in the ER, and maybe they're provided some medication and they're there overnight and they get sent home with outpatient referrals. And then you try and wrap this team around them to keep them safe. But there are those that's not good enough for, and that they need to be someplace to stay safe, to be properly stabilized on medication. And those kids are sent out of the community, which creates problems because, just from a family perspective, the closest youth, again, Yakima has a facility. It's difficult to get a Benton or Franklin County youth into those because they're full with Yakima County residents. So oftentimes they end up in either Spokane or on the west. The west side is where the bulk of the facilities are that would treat youth inpatient.
Thank you,
Great.
appreciate that.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. You got a lot of good things going on, and once you get this thing stood up and going, I can guarantee that you're gonna see a big bunch of participants. And hopefully we'll get people out of the revolving door of the judicial system and out of the jails, and some of the homeless that are stuck in the cycle of what they're stuck in, get a new lease on life. So we thank you for what you guys are doing. Appreciate it. Yep. Thanks for joining us.
Great night.
Alrighty, council, the consent agenda is, next up here on our list, which would include the payment of the bills, approve the minutes of the regular meeting February 7th, 2023. Resolution 1223 related to surplus properties with toppers, printers, and plotters. The motion to authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 2, engineering services contract for water systems plan update with JB. Motion to authorize the mayor to execute engineering services contract for SCADA upgrades to water sewer systems with RH2. If there's anyone from the audience virtually this evening who would like to make comment, go ahead and raise your virtual hand. We have no one in the audience this evening live and in person. I see no hands raised virtually. Amy, do you?
No, Mayor.
Okay, with that, council, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, council. All right, this is our first opportunity for citizens' public comment for items not on the agenda. Again, we have nobody with us in person. If you'd like to address council for items not on the agenda virtually, if you raise your virtual hand, we'll ask Amy or Stephanie to recognize you and give you 3 minutes to address council for items not on the agenda. Keith Shelley has her hand up. Stephanie, or Amy, you wanna unmute Shelley, please? Shelley, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear me, but there's terrible, terrible feedback. We can barely hear anything. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. Go ahead.
Can you hear the feedback?
No, I can't. Go ahead with your comments, please.
Okay, can somebody there fix the sound so that we could actually hear the meeting? All that's coming through is feedback.
Okay, we will look into that. Thank you. We'll
We can't hear anything, and we missed a lot of the beginning too because it's quiet now and it's been doing this. It'll be quiet for about a minute and then horrible feedback.
Okay, you might
So
even
it's
try to log
frustrating.
off and log back on. All right.
Yeah,
thank you,
and
Shelley.
yep, see, okay, it's back again.
Anyone?
And we've gone to different computers. It's the same. Yeah. So,
Thank you. We'll look into that.
and it took us.
All right, council, we'll go ahead. We don't have any ordinances, resolutions, motions, or public hearings this evening. Or do we have any unfinished business or new business? So, this is an opportunity for citizens' public comment for items that were on the agenda as well. If you'd like to make comment to council, you can raise your virtual hand to be recognized, and Steph, you'll unmute you. You have 3 minutes for related items. No one locally here, obviously, and no virtual hands raised. Stephanie or Amy, do you see anybody?
We do not.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to staff and council announcements and reports. We'll go ahead and start with staff. Anybody have something this evening to start up? We'll go from the right to the left today. So, Mr. Mendenhall.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. A couple weeks ago, I sent a follow-up to our meeting last time on the survey, indicating some of the research that I found with the sister cities and what they're using. I also had a phone call presentation with Hello Lamppost last week and asked them about their services, and they indicated that what we're looking for is not a service they provide. So staff's moving forward with Ron and his services and starting to get that together, and we'll be bringing a list of survey questions to you for review before we send it out to the community so that you're aware of what's happening there. And that's my report.
Hey, Gary. Mr. Slade.
Thank you, Mayor. So last week, I get to spend Valentine's Day and the day after with the mayor up in Olympia doing some legislative meetings, dealing with the SR 224 Red Mountain Vicinity Project, specifically trying to secure another $5.5 million to fully fund the $31.5 million project. Busy day. I think we had doors that were open that we with representative centers that we didn't get to meet with in the past. So I'll kind of give you the who we met with and whatnot. It was all positive. Our day started off at 6:30 on Wednesday morning with the Washington Highway Users Federation weekly legislative briefing. That was Representative Hutchins, the 26th district. He's a Republican. I think he's Gig Harbor. And so he's a new representative, speaks very well, really into transportation. And so I took time afterwards to introduce him to where West Richland is on the east side of the state. So we had shared something. I grew up in Olalla, right next to Gig Harbor, so we shared something in common and whatnot. So, and then the remaining 10 meetings with our representatives. We met with Representative Mark Clicker of the 16th district. He is on the Transportation Committee. We met with Senator Marco Elias, who is out of the 21st district. He is a Democrat. He's the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee. Knew our project, had the numbers right. It's really welcoming to go in there and the whole 10 minutes we get with them to tell your need and where you're at. They all like that we were part of the solution with the backlog of transportation projects the DOT has to provide. And we're wondering how a city of 17,000 took on a $31.5 million project and get it back on track and get it done. And, the simple answer is that the game changer for West Richland, we didn't have a choice. It's either you want it done, you go figure out a way to do it. And so it's got us a lot of credibility in Olympia. We met with Representative Jake Fye from the 27th district. He's a Democrat. He's on the representative. He's the transportation chair in the House. Again, had the numbers, knew the project. And those two are we didn't get to meet with the last couple of times we've been in Olympia. We met with Representative Andrew Barkus. He's in the 2nd district. He's the transportation ranking minority member. And he just loves us. He thinks that what we're doing with the DOT is a model program that they can do across the state. So he has been promoting West Richland. A guy from Tacoma is promoting West Richland in our project. We're not in the 8th district anymore, but we did meet with all our representatives from the 8th. We told them it doesn't matter whether we move to the 16th or whatever, you're still stuck with us. So we met with Senator Matt Banky. We met with Senator Curtis King of the 14th district. He's the transportation ranking member in the Senate. We met with Representative Skylar Rude, who's our 16th district. And it's fun. You get to go through security and call and they come out and get you and you go back. So it was quite a change. And then the new representative, Stephanie Bernard of the 8th district, we met with her. And then the new representative in the 8th district, April Connors, that was recently elected. And then finished our trip up there with Senator Dozier, Perry Dozier out of the 16th. And again, like I said, they went very well. All their numbers, all their stuff had our 5.5 million already included. It's not a done deal, but looking very positive with that. And we're successful and that money gets in the budget, which I didn't. Brent, maybe you can chime in. This is a longer session, so April, May. I don't know when the session will end. But is that what typically? Hopefully, it's not.
It could go long.
Yeah, hopefully it's not an extended session. But Councilman Moran, I'll respond back to the Council of Government. But if we're successful in the 5.5 million, that will free up some local money. So the carbon reduction funding, it's CRP funding, and also TAP funds that we previously got for the SR 224 pathway. We won't need that funding, which will mean not only it'll be in about almost $800,000 would be able to go to the City of Kennewick's pathway project to take Keene Road to the mall. So, but we won't know that until this is the thing. So I'll follow up with an email to your question for the council government for that.
Roscoe, appreciate the date on the Valentine's Day. He didn't buy, by the way. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'm pleased to announce that our SRO is currently in the school and is doing well. So we've got him plugged in finally. I'm actually working with the school district right now and have a meeting scheduled in March to talk about contract stuff. I've reviewed it and there's some changes that need to be done, but and they're helping us looking at funding some of that position. And so I'll be obviously bringing that before the council when that time comes, but it's a project that I'm continuing to work on. I am tracking the House bills, Senate bills for law enforcement type bills that are going on right now. So I'll be reporting back to you guys as that goes. The WASPIC actually reported that the Blake bill has been amended and they approved the amendment of that, which is, in my opinion, good news. The pursuit bill has passed their version of it. So that's moving forward also. And again, I'll report on it as things progress. So Isaiah Suarez, our new officer, he's a lateral that we have. I'll be introducing to him March 7th at the council meeting. He is starting his FTO training next week. So that's good news for the department and the team. And then the other thing I wanted to report tonight was, I haven't talked a lot about it this year, but when the laws passed and the pursuits law changed on us, obviously the police department restricted it under Chief Majetic at the time. I've also kept the restriction that we don't pursue based on the laws that have passed. Our team continues though to work on finding stolen vehicles. As you probably saw maybe on a Facebook post this weekend, that was just one example of they're out there being proactive, trying to find and recover stolen vehicles. Before I came in tonight, they found another one. So I was like, all right, I'm going to bring this up to the council, let them know they're out there doing good work on that, regardless of the laws. We ain't pursuing, but we're trying to find them anyway and unoccupied if we can, so we can get them back to their original owners. I guess I would also just say that to the best of my knowledge, most of the recovered stolens are from other cities. So not that we don't have stolens, we get stolens too, but unfortunately they land in West Richmond. We try to take care of business. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Councilmember Bloom.
Well, happy Mardi Gras. For those online, was a king cake here. So if you come in person, you can have some nice king cake. I guess one point I'd bring up, the Ben Franklin Transit's funding profile. They were actually down almost 6% in sales tax revenue for November, which is a significant first time it's been down in almost forever. That's November over November. Since this is 1/6 of a cent, 6/10 of a cent as compared to the county's 1/10 of a percent, or well, whatever, 1/6 of this. So the mental health funding will be close to 8, maybe even 9 million a year. So it will be that sales tax will turn in revenue. Looking at what Ben Franklin, because it expands both counties totally, which is all the agricultural purchases as well. So I think it's going to be an adequate funded program and hopefully I'm really looking forward to that. And no, I wasn't in detox. I was applying for insurance and the nurse there was working the sideline. But so I'll be heading down to Las Vegas for a transit American Transportation Council meeting down in Las Vegas. I got to change the battery on my place down there. So
2 birds with 1 stone.
well, it's a cheap attendance.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Moran.
Thank you. Last week, we had our Benton Franklin Council of Governments meeting, and there was a lot that we discussed, including adding an obligation to the Transportation Improvement Plan obligation status for West Richland. We talked a lot about the changes that are coming forward that we would like to get for the bylaws and the policies, which is part of the email that I had sent to Roscoe. There are some rather large changes that they're hoping to get done. One of them is to make sure that we can, rather than having two separate meetings, one for the Benton Franklin Council of Government and a second for the Benton Franklin Economic Development District, include it all as one. And rather than have the other groups that are part of the development district meet separately, they could apply to be something considered associate members of the Benton Franklin Council of Governments. And that is a new thing that they're including now, or that they're hoping to include in the bylaws, is associate membership. And that would be something where a member municipality, if they decided that perhaps they didn't want to pay a larger amount of dues, they could be an associate. And I'm still trying to figure out what the benefit would be of still paying some dues and being an associate member without getting much of the other benefits. So I'm still trying to figure that out. So more to come for that. They have, because of this, also changed they will be, if we choose to approve it, change the quorum, which would help significantly because we have on occasion had difficulty getting quorum, but this would make it much easier to get quorum. There is a change that they had also, in the email that I had sent to Roscoe, suggested, which is for policy rather than bylaw and can be approved separately. And that policy would be for the TAC is the Technical Advisory Committee, which is normally with staff. What they would like to change in that is, rather than having just one representative from the municipalities, counties, organizations, that they would have two separate. One would be focusing on transportation and the other focusing on planning, because one might not always know the other's subject matter of expertise. So I thought that that was interesting, and I had asked if the TAC members had been asked about this. I was told no, so that's why I asked Mr. Slade if he could give his input on that. And I provided all of the policy and bylaw in that email, which I also believe you're on that forward as well. Yes, of course. And yeah, other than that, there was discussion for the carbon reduction funding distribution. I know that Kennewick was chomping at the bit for us to drop out of it so that they could get it. So I'm sure that they would be really happy for us to get our money elsewhere so they could get that. So I appreciate that. And other than that, our next meeting is going to be on March 17th at 10 a.m. and it is going to be considered our annual meeting. We're hoping that we can go over some of the major things people might have issues with for bylaws and approve the bylaws at that time. It's not guaranteed, possibly even approving the policies. So please look over them, and I can send them. Well, Stephanie has them. So if anybody else would like to see them, if you ask Stephanie, she can provide that to you. And I'm more than happy to take your input to the COG.
Councilmember Stoker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, since I can't do this any other way but here, I wanted to have a discussion or propose a discussion with my fellow council members. Our rules and procedures from our handbook says that parliamentary guide, matters of procedure not otherwise provided for herein shall, insofar as practical, be determined by reference to Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. So the whole point of all of this is to allow us to be able to have discussions, debates, share ideas, have diversity of opinion, and which is part of our council values. And so I think we need to do a little bit better job of adhering to what our policies tell us that we're doing, and also then the Robert's Rules of Orders. And I take exception to this because of what happened at the last council meeting. In that Robert's Rules of Order indicates that with a consent agenda item, it only takes an objection for it to be removed from the consent agenda and moved to the normal process of doing business. And so I really think that there were some bounds that were overstepped by unilaterally and arbitrarily denying the council members opportunity to object to an item that was on the consent agenda. And so with that, I really think that we should be doing a better job of allowing our fellow council members of this elected body to be able to share their concerns, their thoughts, or their positive feedback, anything that they want to say about a particular item or topic that's on our agenda, especially the consent agenda, when you don't get to, as a body, this body doesn't really get to speak to those items. Our audience can, our citizens can, but we can't without taking it off. So with that, we're going to keep the time to speak.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Bloom, you had something else to add?
Oh, one more thing. If you've been driving by on the freeway by the old Richland Y, you'll notice the Ben Franklin Transit Building disappeared last Tuesday. It was leveled, built in 1980, the year I moved here. You'll be seeing a new 2-story building going up next week.
Mayor Pro Tem Brink, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will not go into the great detail that Director Slade went into with regard to activities on the Hill last week. As I was up there concurrently with the mayor and with Mr. Slade attending the Association of Washington City Action Days. So I did meet with Representative Rude, Representative Clicker. I had a brief meeting with Senator April Connor at our social get-together. But given what the mayor and the director were focused on, I focused on issues dealing with local control in the city, zoning, housing. I feel very strongly that our local cities need to have the ability to decide what housing fits for our community. So I stress that with our representatives. There is legislation to mandate certain zoning, but I think we as council, based on input from our citizens, are in the best position to make those decisions. So I did bring back a souvenir for everyone. It is on your desk. I figured since others could not go because of schedules and other circumstances, this is the State of the Cities report. AWC puts one of these out annually on various topics. This one deals with infrastructure, basically how city infrastructure across Washington has barriers they need to overcome for improvement. What more can be done to support our interconnected network? Because as everyone knows, I'll state the obvious, our roads do not end at our borders. They go to other cities, state highways, interstates, and so forth. So I encourage you all to look at that. Our neighboring city, Pasco, is actually mentioned on chapter 4. So hopefully we'll be in the limelight soon with some of the things we're doing here. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. I yield back to you.
Mayor Pro Tem Brink, appreciate it. Councilmember Hay?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to bring up, I have the privilege to be working now with the West Richland Senior Center. And somehow I'm kind of worked into, now I'm their treasurer. So it's amazing how things happen when you retire. But it's an exciting time. I think for the senior center, we're really working hard to bring it back from COVID. And there's so many seniors in our community that are in need. So we're working on a few ideas of putting a pantry in there. So we have some food that we can get out to the local seniors in our area. And it's been exciting to do. And I've been working with Eric, and we're looking at renaming the West Richland Senior Center to the Bill Shane Senior Center. All of you, I'm sure, are aware of Bill Shane and the work that he did through the years not only with the fire district, with the city, with Roscoe. He is so involved with the chamber, he is so involved, and the senior center. I swear he was president for about 20 of the years. So that's an exciting time. So we're working on all that paperwork. We are starting the luncheons back up, the first luncheon since 2020, and that's going to be March 14th, a Tuesday at 11:30 down at the senior center. I encourage people to come and support the senior center. We're going to be coming up with a new membership program to be able to include a lot more of the businesses in town that want to support our seniors. And it's just exciting to get behind our seniors and see, not only with the police, with the fire, all of the city means the world to them. And so it's great to stand behind them. So I wanted to let you know about that. The next item is the West Richland Chamber is having their upcoming luncheon on March 1st. And we have the privilege of having our speaker, Eric Mendenhall, is going to talk about, and I'm not sure if the mayor's at that one too. You're more than welcome if you're going to speak there too. Talk about the city of West Richland and what all's going on. So far we've had a great attendance. People want to hear what's happening, in West Richland and what's going on. So I'm grateful to the city. I know I'm the director anymore, but I'm still involved with the change. I'm kind of a mentor I call them the boys that are there. But a lot of good things are happening, and I think all the businesses and the communities and the other communities in our region need to know about it. So that's going to be April 1st. It starts at 12, and I encourage, one thing I would like to encourage is, I'm really involved with the community, and then I have the privilege of sitting on city council. I would love to see city council members being more involved with the community, with the events going on, not only with the chamber, but with the senior center, with the city, when we start back up the farmers market and all that. I think it would be really great for city council to be out there. And so the community can see who our council people are if they don't get on for the meetings. I think it would be very beneficial, not only for us as council, but for the community to see the support that we stand behind this community. So I encourage you to come to the luncheons, come to the senior center for their first luncheon. So I encourage fellow city council to be more involved with our community, not just with the meetings we go to, but actually in the community. So that would be exciting to see for me. And the last thing, today David I saw him at the Richland Chamber luncheon today. And it was great to see him. And I thought it was so interesting that since I'm retired now, he was so kind to remind me of the meeting tonight. Just in case, with me now being retired, it seems that I guess there is the impression that once you retire, you get forgetful. And so I don't have a calendar. I don't have all that. So I appreciate his support with me. And just to let you know, I'm not quite at that level yet to where I'm forgetting things unless I don't have my calendar, I guess. But it was good to see him. It was a great luncheon, and the West Richland Chamber, just so you know, and the Richland Chamber have a joint membership, and that's going really well. And it's really great to work together on so many things, and I think it helps both cities dramatically. So thank you, David, for your support and your reminders, and keep them up because you never know when I will definitely need them. That's all. Thanks.
It won't take long for that memory deal. I'm already there. May, I'm gonna be at a waste management conference on the first, but, Mayor Pro Tim Brink is gonna go ahead and fill the shoes to, stay and be in the front row and heckle, Eric during his presentation, so. Would encourage anybody else that wanted to go to the luncheon, go ahead and do that too, it'd be great. All right, well, Roscoe, thank you for all the hard work you did in Olympia. You made my report. That was all I had for this last week. So with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 7:09. Thank you, council. Thank you, citizens.